I have some little pieces I've taken out of my files, and I'm just going to read a couple to you. The ones that are down there are most important, of course, because they have a lot of facts in them that propaganda didn't tell anybody about, but you have them there. And as I said, they give the name of the guy who said he was paid $10,000 to kill Patton, because Patton knew that they didn't have to have an extra year of the war. He knew they were setting it up so that they could have the Cold War next, and the Soviets would get all the land they wanted. And he knew all that, and he didn't like it. And he was very outspoken, so he was in his Jeep one day, and a great big truck came up and hit him. And another one, a big truck hit him again. And he got out of the Jeep. He was hit with a lead pipe. He ended up in the hospital. He told his wife to get him out because he wouldn't live through it. And he was given a needle, which they thought was an embolism, in the hospital, and died, but it wasn't. It was cyanide, as the guy who was paid to kill him said. That's what he died of, cyanide. It's all down there. So anybody who interfered with the plan and the business of it, profits of it, and what was schemed to be done was not there anymore. And Patton was so popular, he could have run for president. And Eisenhower, compared to Patton, was, I guess, what Schwarzenegger would call a little girly man. But anyway, Patton was done away with. So now, in 1938, and I'm quoting here, this is a document. In 1938, a man with a brilliant mind but of low character, it says here, he wrote an open letter, Churchill did, open letter, from England to Adolf Hitler. And he said, quote, "If England should ever suffer a national misfortune like that of Germany's of 1918, I will pray to God to send us a man of your power of will and spirit." From Churchill to Hitler, 1938. Then, of course, the bankers paid off all Churchill's huge gambling debts, and Hitler was out of luck. So that's from one of my papers. And let's just do a little bit of the news now. The British MP, of course, you know what Kenny did when Galloway tried to come to Canada. It was Kenny. And of course, the usual crowd at the B'nai B'rith and the ADL stopped him from coming in. So now he's quite rightfully suing them. He's suing them for libel and slander. They called him a terrorist. He's a British MP. You know, please. Things are getting ludicrous. So I don't blame him. He's suing them, and so he bloody should. Now this is about the swine flu. And as I said last week, when people asked me what I thought, SARS was man-made. This flu, the very peculiar thing about it is, and they say this is rare, it's got the bird, the pig, and the human, all combined. A very rare combination, according to the doctors, the specialists. Extremely rare, this combination. Secondly, I followed it when it first started, and I watched the count of people dead in Mexico until it got to 159. Guess what they're saying today? 16 were dead in Mexico. And that was last week. When it got to 159, people started phoning in and asking this very pertinent question. Why are the Mexicans dying and others are not? They're getting it, but it's mild, but Mexicans are dying. So after all these people started phoning in about why the Mexicans were dying, and several people like myself knew from that this is a test run of a genetically directed recombinant flu. It's a test run, so it won't go major. They know enough now that it will kill people who have Asian genes, which the Mexicans have. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So it's genetically directed, and it's man-made like SARS was, and I did an article, as I told you before, for the SARS Commission. The article came out in Discourse and Disclosure. I had a bibliography of the British Lancet and 2 doctors here in Ontario that said what I said. And it came out in our paper, but it didn't come out anywhere else. So that was another test run. And that was leaked from 2 labs in China, 2 American labs leaked that. And there was a lot of air traffic between Toronto and China at that time. Now this is the same thing. This is a genetically, what Kelly, the guy that they killed who was working on bioweapons, when we come to the part in this course where we're doing bioethics, it'll be about bioweapons and bioethics. But Kelly, who was found killed in England, he said, I'm working on bioweapons, and one of the things I'm working on is what we call an ethnic bomb. So you can have genetically directed viruses. And that's what's going on here. Like I said, some people phone me, and I'm not going to try and change their minds. If I were that afraid, I would not come out to travel on subways or whatever either. I would not do that either, and I don't blame them. Apparently now, they've gotten something like 22,000 calls from the health, telehealth. And there's people, all the masks are sold out apparently. I guess they'll be getting more. And of course the World Health has nothing to do with your health, trust me. They already know. They've done enough of a test now, so they're lying and saying in Mexico only 16 dead. Sorry, I watched it for 3 days and it built and it built and it built. Where 2,000 were infected and about 159, that's the last figure I heard, were dead. Now I'm hearing 16 in Mexico were dead of it. Sorry, they didn't like the questions coming in. Well, why are the Mexicans dying from it? We're not. Well, we have a different genetic makeup. So it says here today, if you're over 60, you may have some immunity. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Absolutely nothing. So maybe they want these people, oh, I'm okay, I'm over 60 out, pop, there you go. Okay, a few more will be gone. And they tell them, you know, they may have an immunity. Now here's another little bulletin. This is back in 07, but it's the same thing. Everything in 07, this is what happened about Iran. This is what they deployed, and it's still over there. Everything is in place for an attack on Iran. 2 aircraft carrier attack forces are deployed to the Persian Gulf. U.S. attack aircraft have been moved to Turkey and other countries on Iran's borders. Patriot anti-missile defense systems are being moved to the Middle East to protect oil facilities and U.S. bases from retaliation from Iranian missiles. And that was in 07. Those things are still there. And here's an interesting little thing. Because I said, what's his name again? Ahmadinejad, okay? Whenever you see him speak, he's always going into the Holocaust denial, which is silly because it did exist. They're only fighting over the numbers. And of course, when I do my Holocaust class, as you know, it's only one of about 11 horrible Holocausts, including Hiroshima. which happened. But the point is, when I listen to this guy, and then I found this, I have to say to myself, who is he working for? He is provocateur number one. He's waving the flag at the bull the whole time. It's so obvious, so stupid. So I said to somebody, I said, well, he must be working for Mossad, okay? Maybe he is head of the place. Who knows what deals go on? Then I saw this, and it says, what if the world's great conflicts were just as phony? Well, a lot of them are phony. You pretend you're mad at me, I pretend I'm mad at you. And he says here, what if Bush and Chavez, Blair and Putin, Olmert and Ahmadinejad were all part of a giant Punch and Judy show? Well, they very well could be. So, and I've got on here, because that's what I've been thinking about Ahmadinejad. He's just too obvious. It's too easy, you know, to get up and say that and wave the flag at the bull, and then away, you know, comes the bull. The next little thing comes from Michael Coren. We all know and love him. This is way back in 2006. We should nuke Iran. Could have right on the net. We should nuke Iran. Oh, he's got 2 pages telling us why. He just says here, it is surely obvious now to anybody, this is how he speaks, okay, with even a basic understanding of history, which he does not have, because I used to call him propagandy, because that's what he does. Politics and the nature of fascism, that something revolutionary has to be done within months, if not weeks, if we are to preserve world peace. Put boldly and simply, we have to drop a nuclear bomb on Iran. Well, I guess nobody listened to him at that point, but that's what he was saying. Now, the veterans, now just listen to this one. A quarter of the 700,000 troops in the first Gulf War got Gulf War illness. That is DU. DU. It's all from DU. They were using it then. They used it in Kosovo. They're still using it. They were exposed to depleted uranium, sarin gas, oil fires, countless pesticides. It's sand over there, isn't it? And anti-nerve gas tablets and anthrax vaccine, all working away in their bodies. And they can't get anything from the US government. Joyce Riley, the nurse, has been working to get them a little money for years now. Half of them are already dead. This is how these people treat these people that they use. They don't think of them any more than you would think of a plastic cup you're throwing away. It says here that the veterans are getting ALS at the rate of twice of someone who hasn't been in the war. Lou Gehrig's disease is what it is. Gulf War veterans are twice as likely to develop it. You can't even breathe on your own if you get this. Neurological disease. It kills within 2 to 5 years. They dropped bombs on chemical plants. You can't, if you drop a bomb on a village, yes, it's horrible and everyone there dies. But if you drop bombs on nuclear plants, chemical plants, you don't know what you're letting out. If they decide to go in, I don't care if it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, whenever they decide to go into Iran and do that, and they've already got all their weapons lined up, that's all well planned out. We're going to be right in that belt of radioactive DU that's going right around the planet. We are going to be in the path of that. So if you think cancers are on the rise now, I advise every one of you, if they go in there and they bomb all those nuclear facilities, if you can't go to Norway or Sweden for the next month, stay in. Stock up on food, whatever. Stay home if you can. Because nothing, you'll be in that belt. It doesn't go up to the poles, but it does go right around the middle of the earth, temperate zone. You'll be sucking all that up, and they don't give a damn. So you'll be just as sick as the soldiers. So if you haven't got the money, now here's a little poster in Canada. September it was. This kid looks about 12 to me. 12. I'm serious. He's wearing all the camouflage, all this crap that isn't going to protect him from chemicals. Nothing is going to protect him. He says here, a career I'll take pride in. Want a career that's more than just a job? Oh, it sure is. More than a job. Oh, yes. A wide range of careers in professional fields and technical trades. Bang, bang, spray, spray, mind control, all kinds of techniques that we all love. Specialized training, that means you're going to get all kinds of pills along with training to make you like killing. Humans don't like killing other humans. They never have. You have to do something with them, train them, propagandize them, give them psych drugs, make them more aggressive, more testosterone, and you'll get a subsidized education. If you come back and you live long enough to get through university, they might pay for it. If you live long enough, but they don't want you to. So to find out more about the full-time career opportunities, visit your local Canadian Forces. Strong, proud, today's Canadian Forces. And of course, that whole story about that woman, the major, found dead in her room. Well, what happened to her? They let this leak out. Last time she was there, she had to go to a hospital. Her and a little group were fired on by Americans who thought they were Afghanis. Wait a minute. Okay, unless they were dressed with the hoods, the robes, the masks, the black cork, how could they be mistaken for an Afghani? The woman was tall, bright blonde hair that shone like a beacon, but they mistook her for an Afghani. So now she's dead in her room, and they'll let us know in a few months out. It's like any other of their internalized investigations, okay? They'll let us know some kind of a story. Now, here's the title of this page here, and it's true. Europe is a radioactive wasteland. So is the Middle East. What's left? Not to mention all the tests they test in America. They do tests in Israel. They probably do tests in Canada. And they spray things on us in between. There's no let up. There's no way to stop or take a rest. We're all guinea pigs. So NATO saved Kosovo, and Kosovo is full of depleted uranium. All of it. Full of depleted, and here's a picture from my file. I didn't want to put it out there because it is so, and there are thousands of babies like this. This one is from Kosovo. You won't, I'll leave it here so you can look at it, but this baby has no arms, one leg, I don't know what's wrong internally, a face, the Iraqi babies, the Kosovo babies in Yugoslavia, they're all being born so grossly deformed, So grossly deformed that they don't live very long, thank God. So this is what's happening now. Issue 1 of the Journal of Degenerative Diseases, links. Lytton Bionetics, Merck Pharmaceutical, that's Bush, the US, Canadian, and British military, the Rockefellers and Mellons in the US, and the royal family in Britain, with 70 years of research and clandestine testing of bioweapons capable of culling populations of so-called human weeds and unfit, useless eaters. And that is from William Thomas, is the first one who wrote about the chemtrails. That's from his book. And they've got all the sites here that were targeted by ordnance containing depleted uranium, 1999, Kosovo, all over. So if you're thinking of having a child in these countries, it's a nightmare. And more, this is nothing to what's going to be going on. So this guy who's very sick, he was in the American Army, and he says here how sick he is, and they're not helping him, and it's all due to DU. So they say to him, if you're right about these dangers, of course he's right, thousands are dead now, why do they continue to use it? So this guy, who's a patriot, a dying patriot, this is why they get away with this. He's dying, but this is what he says. When you go to war, your purpose is to kill. And DU was the best killing thing we got. And there he is, on his last legs, from this stuff. But this is what he says. With that kind of a mentality, they should be able to do whatever they want with all of us. So he said, now this is what they said in the memo from the Army. This is what they said now. If no one makes a case for the effectiveness of DU on the battlefield, DU rounds may become politically unacceptable. Oh, and thus be deleted from the arsenal, the memo reads. If DU penetrators prove their worth during our recent combat activities, then we should assure their future existence. Completely oblivious to what they're going to be doing, even to their children, to everybody. This is insanity to the max. It's total insanity. And now they want to nuke every nuclear plant in Iran, and even places where they'll be underground, where they think they're underground. So, now, let's talk about these guys. Here's another little bon mot from Churchill. Now, this is two things Churchill said, aside from congratulating Hitler, because let's face it, after the First World War, all Germany's gold was taken. They didn't have a bit. So they had to go off the gold standard. And what they were doing, they were using Douglas's methods of creating their own money based on their resources and the labor, intellectual and otherwise, of all the German people. And by, when did he get in? 33. By 38, the workers all had homes. They had invented, they weren't given any oil, so they made their own from coal. Everything they were denied, the rubber, they made synthetic rubber. Germany was a nation of geniuses. I'm sorry, that's what bugged Churchill. Every time they were denied a certain thing from the world, their trade was cut, they invented it themselves. They were denied cotton. The first synthetic fabrics came out of Germany. First synthetic rubber out of Germany. First synthetic oil out of Germany. They built the country anyway. They didn't need anybody. And so that's why Churchill sent this letter to Hitler. And what 3 countries after the First World War were actually not going to these guys for money, the bankers, not going to the bankers for loans. They did what Lincoln did. They created their own money, interest-free. And what were these 3 countries just before the Second World War that were creating their own money? Italy, Japan, Germany. Coincidence? I think not. And Churchill admits it. Now, here's what he says. He said it in the First World War. He said, if Germany rises up again and starts taking all our trade, then we have fought the First World War for nothing. Then they did that. So then this is what, after he had all his gambling debts paid by the banks, Churchill said, now he even admitted this, Germany's unforgivable crime, and I've got the book it's in, unforgivable crime before the Second World War, Churchill said, was her attempt to extricate her economic power from the world's trading system and to create her own exchange mechanism, her own money, which would deny world finance. Remember, finance has nothing to do with the economy. The bank dicks, and they weren't making a dime. Deny world finance its opportunity to profit. And he said that, Churchill said to Lord Robert Boothby, quoted in the foreword, 2nd edition, Propaganda in the Next War. Okay, that's Churchill once. Now here's Churchill twice. You must understand that this war is not against Hitler or National Socialism. Churchill is quoted, but against the strength of the German people, which is to be smashed once and for all, regardless whether it is in the hands of Hitler or a Jesuit priest. They were taking away Britain's trade. They took it away before the First World War. They were doing it even after they were smashed and had nothing. They invented everything they needed. They invented their own money. They followed Douglas, so they had to be smashed again. And of course, what's his name, Roosevelt and Churchill both worked with Stalin. Stalin, who even said how proud he was that he starved 10 million Ukrainians to death. Oh, they wouldn't work with Hitler, no. But they'd work with Stalin. So you see, it has nothing to do with ethics or who's bad, who's good. It's all planned by these people here. And they've done it for generations now, and they're planning the next one. It's usually depression, war. Depression, war. This is what we've had ever since they moved into the U.S. in 1913 in the Federal Reserve, which, as I've said before, is not federal, it has no reserve, it's not a system, it's a scam. And because all these banks are not corporations, but partnerships, they don't have to disclose a damn thing. And they don't. The Fed has never been audited, never. When it was tried to be audited in '69, the Justice of the Peace, who would not accept Federal Reserve money in his courtroom, was found dead. Just a little Justice of the Peace in some state, I've got the file, found dead because he wouldn't accept. He said, that's not real money. I won't accept it here. So he was found dead. So let me just repeat this. This is from the old Spotlight. After the war, reconstruction was necessary in Austria. And Austria did that too. In fact, when Hitler said, let's have Austria join Germany, they were happy to join. After the war, reconstruction was necessary in Austria as in all other countries. But the Austrian government had its own way of financing the reconstruction. Instead of borrowing from the banks and repaying them with taxes, the government issued money directly to the merchants, provided that the merchants reduce their selling prices accordingly. That's right out of Douglas. And next week, I'll be explaining what Douglas's economics were and why in 1932 the banks paid $23 million to get him off every radio station that he was speaking on around the world, because he had the solution. Douglas. So they were obeying, because Douglas was going since the 20s, so they knew what Douglas was about, and that's what they were doing. It says here, it was a compensation to the merchants for a price decrease to the consumers. It was to directly finance consumption by what they called a compensated discount. Douglas. And if nobody knows anything about Douglas, they need to know. If anybody here is taking an economics course in this university, it's laughable. You need to know about Douglas, because all you're learning in this university is how to be one of these. Finance, you're learning all about lending, finance, and nothing about true economics. And Douglas knew that. He was an engineer. His wife was an engineer. He built huge things for Britain, very high up. And he went to India to build a bridge there. And he had all the laborers, and he had all the materials to build the bridge. He said, okay, come on, let's get started. Everybody said, this is in the 20s, we can't. Why? We have no money. Right away, as an engineer, he thought, how stupid is that? Money is a medium of exchange. It is not a commodity, but they've turned it into a commodity. Because if they want to, then they can bring down any country they want. Devalue, bring the value up, bring it down, bet on it. They're total bastards. That's all they are. Anyway, so Austria was using Douglas. The bankers found out about it, and they said, no, you have to take a loan from us. And so within a few months, Austrians had nothing. It was the same in the American Revolution. It's all about who owns the printing press for the money. That's what it's about. And that's what why bankers have depressions and wars. They'd rather kill off, their system cannot support the people in the world, so they have to kill them off. So their system will keep going. Just kills like musical chairs. This is what they have to do. So every time people start talking about getting rid of them, which they are now in the states, 20 states are already talking about, we want our sovereignty, we want out of this. You're not obeying our Constitution. The federal, they're not. They're breaking the 9th Amendment, the 10th, the 2nd, everything. That's not, America's a republic. Not like this bunch of weenies we have. I mean, they're just up there like, they're not even puppets. They don't even have that much going on. So, what is this about? Oh, yeah. This was from the Spotlight. I have a lot of old Spotlights. But a lot of the Gulf War vets started committing crimes, doing things to people, assaulting them. A lot of them are in jail as well. All from what they gave them, the psych drugs, everything else that they pumped into them, and half of them are dead now. Oh, now, here's another article that I think I put out last year. The global toll from serious birth defects. All over the world, We're all being radiated, okay? Some worse than others. And of course, everybody should go get a thyroid test. The first thing that's attacked if you are under radiation of any kind is your thyroid. Well, if your thyroid stops functioning, you will become a cretin. It governs your intelligence. You will get fat, you will lose hair, and you will become very stupid. But it's the first gland that is affected if there's any kind of irradiation going on. And millions of Americans are affected with thyroid disease. Some of them are going too fast, some are going too slow. I mean, this is the first thing. And it was discovered what was happening by a Japanese doctor after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. How many people's thyroids were totally destroyed. Now, this is another small book by General Smedley Butler that I might put out. If enough people want it, I'll get it copied. But Smedley Butler was the only soldier to ever get the Award of Honor twice, Medal of Honor twice, General. After the First World War, he wrote this little book called War is a Racket. And in this book, he put out actual charts of companies like Dow Chemical, DuPont, these companies, and he put in the chart what they made before the war and what they made during the war. 2,000% profit. He had columns in this book about how many percentages they went over, thousands of percentages of what they would make when there was no war. Chemical companies, weapons companies, even companies that made boots for the soldiers, leather companies, anything used for war. They all made 1,000% over what they normally made. So war is the biggest business on the planet, aside from these, because they plan the wars. So what have we got going on here? Here. This is why people go to war and listen to all this crap. We've got the banks, and they go back to, they killed Caesar, of course, because he took the coinage away from them, so they killed him. They're back that early. So we have the banks, we have the Bible, a really nasty book with a nasty little man in it, but people still read it and think it's okay. And then we have big pharma pumping our brains with psychotic drugs. That helps too. And so most people are going around in a great big propaganda delusion about all the rewards they're going to get, maybe in heaven, not here. This is the biggest thing about this one. It's about what you'll get when you go to heaven. So everybody watches. If you believe you're going to get a reward in heaven, and you just you keep your head down through life, you don't stick up or stand up for anything, you're listening to these creeps. And it's all propaganda, every bloody bit of it. All of it is propaganda. That's why this course is called Studies in Propaganda. Somebody said to me once, "Oh, does that mean you teach us how to do propaganda?" No. When Freud's book on studies in hysteria didn't mean you go to learn to be hysterical. Studies in something means you're analyzing it. You're analyzing it. But that's what this person thought. I was teaching propaganda. Then, after the war, this little group of people, I don't know their exact names, but this group here, these people went to Smedley Butler. Now this is how stupid they are. They believe their own propaganda. Smedley Butler, a hero, a man of integrity, he writes this, or maybe he wrote the book after just to teach everybody. They go to him. They want him to be head of a coup. This is true, that they're going to pull on the US government. They want a fascist coup right after the First World War. Don't forget, they were at the Treaty of Versailles. Now, there's books and books and books about the Treaty of Versailles. But who ran the Treaty of Versailles? These guys. They made all the rules. They were the ones that Keynes was at Versailles. He said to them, wait a minute. He said, you're going to starve everybody in Germany. They're going to die. They took everything. They took so much gold, and they said Germany owed trillions of dollars. And Keynes was there, and he said, you are now setting up the Second World War. He knew exactly what they were doing. And they were setting up the Second World War. They knew it had to happen if they punished Germany like that. And people were starving on the streets. Oh yes, starving. So then Hitler comes out of the trenches and he gets elected chancellor, and he starts rebuilding the country using Douglas's ideas. Oh my God, this wasn't in the plan, okay? He did not, the Jewish people in Germany, and I have Jewish family, he said, you'll have to leave because we don't like your banking, system. We want you to go. Well, he wasn't the first country in Europe. There were lots of other countries said you'll have to go. Lots of them. And so they went on ships. But what happened? When they got to America and Canada wanted to take them all in, and so did America. The guy that was head of the Jewish Congress, Wise, I think his name was, in America. So they went to the government and they said to the Americans and the Canadians, do not let them in. And they said, what do you mean? They're your people. We'll take them in, that's fine. No, if you take them in, we won't have any leverage to get Palestine. Send them back. So they were sent back to Germany, but they were sent back by their own Zionist people. And that's in this book as well. And nobody has refuted it. So then, to get on with Smedley Butler, they come to him after. They want him to be the chief guy in this coup. And he's going to be the head guy. And they're going to have a fascist coup. And you know what he did? He listened to them until he had every bit of information about what the plan was. And then he went to the president. He told on them. It didn't happen. Why they would think a man like him would want what they would have to offer, mere money, is beyond me. But anyway, they thought he would fall for it and go along. And he just told on them. But he didn't tell till all the meetings were over. And he had every little bit of information about how they were going to do it, where it was going to be, blah, blah. So that's what happened to these under Smedley Butler. And so there are people of integrity. And of course, as usual, there's only a few. But they make up for all the rest. Then, this other little bit of news here. Now, Carlyle makes a lot of money on everything for war, and the White House is full of people from Carlyle, okay? And this is what they do. The founders, Stephen Norris and David Rubenstein in 1987, the Queen's in on it, the Rockefellers are in on it, the Rothschilds are all in on it. The board of Carlyle are, now they're all about weapons. They run the White House, and they're the ones making all the money. Here they are. Bush Sr., James Baker III, John Major, Arthur Levitt, Chairman Frank Carlucci, the best bud of Donald Rumsfeld in college. Since Princeton, they've been best buds, and the Windsor family. They're making all the money on these wars. Other Carlyle employees, Bush Jr., and Colin Powell. No, whenever they're going to do something really nasty, they use a black front man. Come on. The States does it all the time. Colin Powell was the one at the UN who read the essay that was plagiarized from the American University student, found out later. So Colin Powell was stuck with that reputation of being a plagiarist. They gave him the essay, he read it. The little trailers were all bomb for bombs or whatever, until the student recognized this paper, kicked up a big stink, said, "That's my paper, I wrote such and such a year." He's hearing Powell read it. So whenever they do something particularly horrible, they use a black front man. Look at Conda Sleazy. Black front man. They send her everywhere. So now, somebody asked me a year ago, what about when Obama gets in? Is it going to be different? And I said then, it doesn't matter if it's Obama or Osama. It'll be the same agenda, same all the way. And apparently it is. And now they have a president who supposedly is charismatic. They're comparing him to Lincoln. Give me a break. All right. And he, of course, has reneged on several things he said before he got elected. And he doesn't mind extending the war in the Afghanistan or Pakistan. He'll go along with Iran if it happens. But what they've got, these people here, because Obama belongs to them, and that's why they're shutting everyone up who says he wasn't born in the U.S. They still haven't come across with a birth certificate of any kind. They just say where he was born. So these people are running him. And the reason they picked him is this. They've got the Americans coming and going. He's black. If he's not killed, whatever happens and he goes along with it, he'll get sympathy. Oh, poor Obama, look, they're making him do that. He really wanted to do this good thing and now they won't let him. Oh, let's weep for him. Mostly the black people in the U.S. will put up with a lot more under Obama. Yes, they will. However, if the bankers don't like what's going on, or if he moves one bit out of line with what they've got to do for him, if he is assassinated, every city in North America, the U.S. at least, will be riots and burning. They know that. So by these people picking him, and he went along with the bailouts, by picking him, that's an insurance policy. That nobody's going to get too upset to have a revolution about these bastards, the bailout, and the trillions that people's children's children, if they live long enough from the DU, are going to be paying an interest for these crooks to bail themselves out. So that's why Obama was chosen. Black face on it again. Okay, guys. We can do anything now. So, here's another couple of little, I had a good time in my files this weekend. I thought, oh, they're so fascinating. Didn't know I had all that in there. I thought I'm gonna really weed them out. And so here's another little thing I found. And this comes from a very well-known German writer, by the name of Herta Ruthard, and she writes in Dialogue magazine, World War I was not started by Germany. The assassination, and you remember that, of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand by Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian killer paid by the British, was the trigger event that caused World War I. Germany was bound by a treaty with Austria and backed the country because of the treaty. Now that's from the Daily Express, Friday, March 24th, 1933, under the heading, Judea declares war on Germany. Because even before the war started, the Zionist group was telling the whole world, boycott, boycott German goods, boycott them all. Long before the war started, boycott them all. And now what happens when churches are boycotting Israeli goods? Ooh, anti-Semitic. Ooh. Well, why? Because the goods are done with the blood of Palestinians. Everything you send here, the orchards were Palestinian. Your goods are soaked in blood, so we're boycotting them. Oh, can't do that, but what did they do before the war ever started? They boycotted German goods of all kinds, which pleased Churchill because that meant Britain had more trade. So, and the second part, World War II was started by Poland, backed by a unilateral British guarantee on March of 1939. Poland partly mobilized her army. On August 30th, 1939, Poland declared a total mobilization, which is the equivalent of a declaration of war. Only on September 1, 1939, after hundreds of acts of cross-border aggression, and this is what it was, had already been committed by Poland, murdering German farmers and burning their houses on German soil, killing by the thousands their German ethnic population in Poland. This is all factual. Some 30,000 in the city of Bromberg alone, and shooting at commercial aircraft flying over international waters. Germany finally invaded Poland. But none of that was in our papers. None of it. What were done to the Germans living in that area right next to Poland. And here's a quote. Here's a quote by the Marshal of Poland in an address to Polish officers in July 1939. Here it is. Quote, Poland wants the war with Germany, and Germany will not be able to avoid it even if she wanted to. Said by Rydz Smigli, Marshal of Poland, in an address to Polish officers near Krakow in July 1939, and quoted in Richthofen. Anyway, it's a long quote here, but you can look at it. And they also said, we are ready to make a pact with the devil if he will help us in the battle against Germany. Notice it says not against Hitler, but against Germany. And in an upcoming war, German blood will be spilled in rivers such as all of world history has never seen before. Polish newspaper, Warsaw, August 20th, 1939. We didn't get any of that here because you have to train people to want to kill and think the other side is evil. But I will say this, I think as far as human nature goes, you can take anyone that's at the bottom of the pyramid, the underdog, I don't care what it is, who it is, and once they come to the top, they will behave no differently. That's humanity. That's why Michio Kaku, the theoretical physicist, will tell you that we will not even get to be a number one civilization before we ourselves, okay? Because, and this is the reason he gives, quoting Michio, we are still in the swamp of fundamentalism. And we are. Religions are used all the time to kill other people. If you want the best reason, whatever the book is, the Koran, the Bible, who cares what it is? It's written by men with testosterone. But most of them are loaded with testosterone, and we kill everybody that isn't us. And because God, we're the only ones God likes, all of this crap goes on. So we're never going to be We're never going to get to even a one civilization. And these people here are actually making us devolve. They're against evolution, the bankers. They don't want a medium of exchange that allows people to have the basics of life so that they can study. They've got everybody working themselves to death, running on the treadmill, so that we have no time to think. If you're in debt and you have to work 2 jobs, do you have any time to philosophize? All these people are dying before they've even figured out why they're here, where they came from, where they're going. We don't even know our history. We don't even know where we're from, never mind where we're going. They're telling us we're going to get a reward up there. Oh, well, tell me again. Like I said, my shoulders to the karmic wheel. I won't go into that, what I said. But anyway, this is what they're up to. And of course, when the war was over, all these people, this one plague upon humanity, the U.S., Kissinger took all the scientists back to America to do the rocket, von Braun, to do the rocket scheme, getting into space. They took all the German scientists, they were okay. Everybody else, went to the Nuremberg. The really bad guys, of course, never got there. And of course, one of the judges and testifiers at the Nuremberg trials was Ewan Cameron, the psychiatrist who basically tortured and murdered all those women in Montreal, assisted by money from our government. He was there. What? You see, anyone looking at this planet from outside must be just killing themselves, either crying or laughing. Oh God, these people, when will they ever learn? So all the germ warfare guys came from Japan, all the scientists and rocket guys came from Germany. So they took what they wanted, including the intelligence, took it back to the U.S. Not only did they rob the resources, but they rob mines and they rob scientists, and if the scientists won't go with them, they kill them. Like the Mossad was in Iraq for 6 months before we went into Iraq, and they were giving orders, kill all the scientists in Iraq. That's what they do, so that the population has nothing, no one to guide them, and then they take what's left. So a lot of those plagues that they have now were worked from the Japanese. And to make sure that they have a war, this is another part. What have I got here? Oh yeah, here we go. The Gulf War saw 35,000 civilian casualties. This is the first one now. The first Gulf War, while not one U.S. or Allied soldier was killed by Iraq. 6,000 retreating Iraqi soldiers from Kuwait were buried alive by U.S. tanks with plows mounted on the front. And why'd they go into Kuwait? Because that's April Glaspie, whatever her name was, I think it was Glaspie, she went over there. They went over there because, number one, Saddam didn't win against Iran. He was supposed to do that dirty job for the Americans, best buds, come on, they were best buds. Didn't do the job. Then they send this silly one over, I think, what's her name, Sleazy took over from her. April, I think her name was, Glaspie, goes over and they say to Saddam, wait a minute, we want you now to privatize your oil. He said, no, the oil belongs to my people. So what does Glaspie do? They're talking away. He says, you know what? Kuwait used to be, well, Kuwait was part of Iraq for a long time, but the British divided it all up. So anyway, he said, they're slant drilling. They're taking my oil. They've got slant drills going on over the border under my land. I think I'm just going to go in there and take Kuwait back. So Glaspie goes, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Nothing. Saddam falls for it. And he goes into Kuwait. And what does he get? The highway of hell. So here, it says here, 6,000 retreating Iraqi soldiers were buried alive by the tanks. And as much as 40 tons of depleted uranium were left in Iraq and Kuwait after the Gulf War. Now, what does it do? Because we're going to be getting all that radiation. So whoever you are out there, join some peace group and try and do something now. This is what's going to happen. According to the UN, there was a 700% increase in cancer rates in Iraq between 91 and 94. And cancer is still a major problem there. They don't care. These people are so psychopathic, these people, that the money doesn't even mean anything. They have trillions. It's nothing. Money is not a commodity, it's a medium of exchange. So what they have are pieces of paper. And as long as the world is fooled with it, they can buy up real stuff. This is what they've been doing for years. And in case the war doesn't start, now, you'll like this. First of all, in World War I, how did they get America into that? Well, the Lusitania. It had like 200 Americans on the ship. The ship was loaded with ammunition. And the Germans sent over notices for every newspaper in the USA saying, do not become a passenger on this ship. This ship has munitions. This ship was going to go right through the U-boats area, where the U-boats all were. It was going to go right through, and Churchill knew it and let it happen. And they sacrificed all those people in order to get America into the war. And why they got America into the war? Because they had to, according to Churchill, they had to wipe out Germany. So she'd never be a threat to British trade again, ever. That meant they needed the Americans. So the Lusitania, that's 1915. And what happens just after that? In 1917, there's not just a war going on here. Now, Wall Street decides they're going to have their phony revolution in Russia. So, in 1917, Wall Street puts about 50 million in a Swedish bank, and they back Lenin, and they back Trotsky. And we tried to keep Trotsky here, but Mackenzie King let him go, because he heard from the Rockefellers and Wilson that to let Trotsky go. And the Canadians said, yeah, but we know he's going over there to start a revolution. We don't want that. Well, let him go anyway. So they let him go. He went over there. Lenin had his own private train to go all the way across Europe to go to Russia. Rockefeller's bank was not touched during the Great and Glorious Revolution. 60 million were killed, and the bankers loved it. They backed it all, even Schiff, the banker Schiff. I have a photograph of him with Lenin. Lenin's in his wheelchair on the edge of eternity, but Schiff is standing behind him. And the grandson of Schiff said, I've got the New Yorker. A few years ago, he said, yeah, my grandfather put 20 million into that revolution. So Wall Street wanted the Soviet state. And in the Second World War, what happened then? In spite of the fact that Stalin killed 10 million Ukrainian people, they dealt with him. And they let the war go on an extra year so they could set up the Cold War. Bankers again, bankers. This is what they do. They instigate war, they lend to both sides, they lend more to the side they want to win. And they love revolutions because they can have even more. Everyone's in debt, doesn't matter who wins, they're all in debt to the banks. So they had that glorious revolution, then they go straight to the Second World War, there's hardly any breath in between. Straight to the Second World War, the Depression in 29, okay. The First War, the Revolution, the Depression in 29, then they go to the Second World War, and I'd have a whole list of little wars after that. You know, there's Korea, there's Vietnam, there's all kinds of wars. And if they're not sure about starting the war, they do something like called a false flag, like the Lusitania, like Pearl Harbor. They knew all about that. The Hirohito was writing Truman and saying, let's negotiate, I'll surrender, blah, blah, before they dropped the bombs. Before they dropped the bombs. So, Second World War. Yep. And everybody thought, oh, the war got us out of the Depression. Crap, absolute crap. They could have turned on the printing presses at any time and printed enough money to come out of the Depression, but they wanted people to be so down, 10 years of depression, nothing but depression, then they don't care what comes along, they'll be in for the war. And they'll believe the war took them out of the Depression. So these people, if you have a belief in good and evil, these people as the instigators of all the misery in the world, yes, they're completely evil. They know what they're doing, they know how much money they're going to make, they know how many people are going to die, and they like it. And they're in on the eugenics part as well. Oh, and by the way, it was Rockefeller that started the big eugenics conference in the US in 1933. They invited Hitler to it, but they started it, and they were sterilizing people in the States long before the Second World War. So this is what's going on here. You want to talk about fascism, and they're still doing it. So the Pearl Harbor was just another reason to get the Americans into the war again. In the First World War, what happened was, aside from the bankers paying off Churchill's debts, because he was a gambler, huge debts, the Zionist group in Britain, Germany was winning. In fact, 2 years into it, Germany said to England, let's just call it quits. There'd be no repercussions, no anybody paying debts. And Germany would have won that. And they said to England, let's just quit now. Let's just not have any more war. And England was thinking about it until the Zionist group came to them. And they said, listen, don't take that offer from Germany. Don't. You can win this. We'll get the Americans in. Don't worry, we'll get them in. But we want Palestine. So England said yes. And then with Churchill came about the Lusitania, the false flag operation, thousands upon thousands. Russia lost 20 million in the Second World War, and that's why Patton was killed, because he said, wait a minute, why are you letting Russia get all that land? We don't need the war to go another year, we can quit now. Why are you doing this? And he was quite vocal about it. So he had to go, because after the Second World War, why did they have the revolution in 1917? Because after all these are planned. After the Second World War, then there was going to be the Cold War. Cold War. Now, when the Cold War was on, still, I was in Australia, about 1960, 61 maybe. And of course, with my experience at the United Nations. I took my resume and I went to a few embassies. When I got to the US embassy, they said, "We have a job for you." I said, "Oh, good." I remember, I was not that old then, but I wasn't that stupid either. So they go, "Okay, we have the perfect job. We want you to work at the Russian embassy." Cold War going on. So I said, and he said, "So all you have to do is report to us once a week. You tell us if you hear anything strange, or you just report to us once a week. You meet me at Boodles," or whatever his club was, something like Boodles. And I said, "Wait a minute, how do you know that there is a job there?" And he said, "Well, the girl we had there's gone." And I said, "Well, where'd she go?" "We don't know." I said, "Oh, well, job's not for me, sorry." So I turned that down. I may have been young, but I wasn't stupid, as I said. So that was during the Cold War. So they'll take anybody, use them. Anybody that's naive enough to believe they're claptrap, they'll do it. And then at the same time, the Hirohito is writing to Truman, "Let's talk. I think we're gonna, I want to surrender here." But no, they decided to drop the bombs anyway to test them and to show Russia that they just set the Cold War up with, show Russia that they had the power. So the only nuclear holocaust on this planet was done to the Japanese. And Nagasaki, Hiroshima. And you have the paper on it out there. This woman that comes sometimes to talk about it, she said, "I was just on the outer rim of it," and she said, "I saw thousands of people melting before my eyes." Hiroshima, Nagasaki. And that was to show Russia, look what we can do, so you better not, try us. And millions upon millions were sacrificed. Did any of these people ever put themselves in harm's way? Any of their children or their children's children? I don't think so. Will they now? No. They have cities under mountains in the United States. Cities that are already planned. Who's going to get in there if it becomes so hideously nuclear that we can't even walk outside? They have all that. You've heard of Iron Mountain. I have the report from Iron Mountain where it talks about substitutes for war. But they've decided after discussing, and we'll hear about them next week, but they decided after listing all the substitutes that could make them as much money as war could, they decided, no, it's not quite enough. So we'll have wars. Wars are planned, instigated. Money is lent to them by these people here. And the people, because they own the media with their money from thin air, people can be worked up into a complete frenzy. See, what's the good of having majority rule if the majority can be twisted this way, that way, the other way? What is the point? A democracy is useless. It's like mob rule. If you have a media that's pumping you up all the time to hate this one, do this, do that, fear and hate, then what's the good of having a democracy? You're going to vote the way these people who own the media want you to vote. Yes, you are. They own the media. They bought it years ago, and what's his name, Swinton, who was head of the New York Press Club, on New Year's Eve in New York at the Waldorf, 1,000 reporters and newspaper people there, and he made a speech and he said, "We are prostitutes." He said, "We write what they tell us to write. The people who own us." Well, that was 1914. Come on. What do you think it's like now? Of course we don't get any real news. We get selected news. We get omissions, errors, and omissions, okay? That's what we get now. So, to get on, we're just going to make a list now. A list. And at the end, I'm going to read you Mark Twain's war prayer. But I have a list in here. What did I do with it? If I can find it. Must be here somewhere. Oh, here it is. I had so many papers today, excuse me. Now, let's just call war what it is. It's a crime against humanity, and it involves robbery and murder. That's what it is. So, why, let's put here, who benefits? With any crime, you have to put who benefits, okay? It's a huge, colossal, global crime. So we have to say who benefits. Now, who gets the biggest chunk from all these dead people, diseases, fallout? Who benefits and gets the most? Like I said, both sides. Doesn't matter who wins. It's like religions. They don't care what religion you have, just pick one. Pick one so that they can all fight. They do not care what religion you pick, but pick one. Have some little tin pot god there that you consider better than anyone else's, and you'll have more conflicts. So who makes the most out of it? The banking cartel. And that's what it is. They set them up and they lend the money. And they plan the next one. Why are they allowed to do that? And Americans know more than we do, because they came in 1913 and Congress, and our government as well with the Bank of Canada, abdicated and turned it over to these criminals. In both cases, and that's what the Americans are saying now. We want the Federal Reserve out, gone. Ever since they came into America, we and America, there have been war, depression, that's what they do. And they make the most and they get the most power. Trillions. How many trillion have the taxpayers bailed them out with? I can't believe it. And the Congress, in the first instance, one guy who still had a modicum of intelligence said, well, this is one big cow patty with sugar on it. I'm not eating this. And they said, no, we're not giving you any bailouts. Well, 2 days later, because you know what they were threatened with? Martial law. You bail us out or else. The country's going under martial law. But they didn't say that in the Congress, okay? So the next ones would be the oil. The oil barons, because you can't even run a tank without oil. You cannot have tanks or any machinery without oil, minimum. So of course they know they're going to make a fortune and they're robbing other people's oil. The next would be, now I'm going to put here corporations. I don't need to name them all. Corporations, because it's corporate totalitarian rule now, which is the same as fascism. It's no different. Corporations go in, just like they did in Iraq, and they privatize all the public assets, which means they rob them. Okay? Which is what they've done to the oil in Iraq. That's the next big benefit, and only certain corporations that the Americans like. In fact, they told Canada after they went into Iraq, oh, you weren't in favor of us going in. We're not giving any contracts to you. Contracts are going to people who sided with us. So they're the next in line. Then the weapons manufacturers, which could be some of these corporations, and of course, as of now, Canada for years has been making weapons for space for the Americans. That's the people who stole my coat, remember? I brought the article to the Munk Center about 4 years ago, and I said, I announced at the mic, here's the name of all the Canadian corporations that are making weapons for space now, for the Americans. I said, they'll be out in the hall on the table. Well, they wouldn't let me put them down on the information table. They were already out in a paper, out in public domain. Couldn't put them down. And then because I kept handing them out, then the security guard was called out. He was supposed to pick me up and take me out. He just stood there with his mouth hanging open. And so the woman comes over and puts her hands on my shoulder. And I said, did you know you're assaulting me right now? So she took her hands off me. But then they were so upset that they went and stole my Harry Rosen coat. In February, I'm standing there without a coat to go home in. So they wanted to teach me a lesson. So they stole my coat. I wonder which one's wearing it now. I don't know. And then they got to test all the new weapons. So companies are over there, test this one for me. This one attacks the brain, or this one, when we go into bioethics, which is coming up, we'll go into bioweapons. But they tested all of them on their own soldiers and their Iraqis. Doesn't matter, our own soldiers will test them first, and all these people will test them, and we'll see which ones work the best. And they said when all the Iraqis surrendered, 1,000 of them would be standing there, and they were all drooling and vacant. So some wave was put up against them, and I'll recite all the weapons to you when we come to that. And then, of course, the winners, and this goes for every time, the winners get to write the history. They get to do all the propaganda and shut out news they don't want and make it all very heroic. Like the Canadians are coming home now and it's all about the glorious dead. There's nothing glorious about being dead, especially when you're young. So these are the people who make all the money and get all the power, get all the contracts, and their economy goes up because they've just robbed and killed to make it go up. And of course, and the great thing about it is, once they go in and decimate everybody in the war, this intimidates the whole world. They know we'll do this, okay? Even though our own kids are going to be poisoned, and maybe the whole species is going to die out in a few generations because there won't be any, everyone will be sterile. That's the first thing that happens. So it intimidates the rest. Well, look what these maniacs are doing. Oh God, don't even bother them. They'll do anything. This is what happens. It's the biggest business except for the banks, because the banks do all this. The bankers do all that. There's 8 families that run the globe, ones who own the Fed, own the BIS, the World Bank. They're all criminals. And in the next class, I'll explain, if nobody knows yet, how they work it and how they get this phony money and people believe that it's real, and they're getting all our real resources for the phony money, and if they can't get them quick enough, then they do this, okay? Now, okay, let's do the results. Let's see now what these wars actually did for us. Okay, what should happen after a war? Should it be all nice and peaceful and rosy? The bad guys gone, the good guys have won, everything's going to be better. What a load, okay? So the results, the actual results of the First and Second World Wars were, now, Russia controlled all of Eastern Europe, the commie, okay, the Glorious Revolution, and people's lives were even worse. That was set up in the Second World War. Stalin was the good guy, killed twice as many as Hitler ever did, but that was okay. They were okay working with Stalin. That's good. What's wrong with him? And he bragged about it to Churchill, that he killed the 10 million Ukrainians, starved to death. That was okay. The bankers now control Europe, the EU. This was all planned ahead of time. Okay, and this is the rule in the EU. They do not allow any country to have more than a 3% deficit or else. That means you cannot have anything for the people. In a real economy, there's nothing wrong with deficits. It's not like running a house. Especially if you create your own money without interest, a deficit means nothing. You create the money as you need it and as the people need it. But under the bankers' rule, where everything they print, just numbers on paper, has interest attached to it, you cannot do anything. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't afford homes for the poor. No money. But when they want a war, billions. When they want to bail out, billions. That should say something. Money is metaphysical. It is numbers. We could do everything in this country that we want to do tomorrow and just add it up later. If anyone, I went to Ottawa to speak about 2 years ago at the university. I spoke to a class of 300 physics students. As soon as I explained to them, you do physics, but tonight we're going to talk metaphysics. Money is an idea. Brilliant. The most brilliant idea ever invented by human beings. It was never meant to be owned by a small group. Ever. It's for the good of mankind. You put numbers. If we decided tomorrow that bottle caps were money, if we all decided that, they would be. It is metaphysical, an idea, so that people share in the wealth of their country because they're building it, they're doing things. People are not liabilities, they're assets. And they know that because they use it. They use people. They know they're assets. But their money system classifies people as liabilities. And we're taught that from a young age. If you haven't got a job, you don't deserve to live. Oh, sit on the curbstone then. What about life, though? What about learning about life and where you're going? So that's what I'm saying. These people are devolving the human race with their system. Nobody is evolving. We're going backwards. We're regressing. And these physics students understood everything I said. They grasped it right away. We could do everything we need tomorrow. Everyone would be employed. Even just cleaning up the mess we've made so far. Millions of jobs. And it wouldn't even depend on jobs. You don't need a job. These people know they've never had a goddamn job. They push paper. All you need is an income. You don't need a job per se. And there aren't enough jobs to give everybody a job. It's impossible. And people should do what they love to do. And Douglas was all about that. Please don't miss next week, because if you've never known about Douglas, you have to learn, okay? I'm just saying that. So they abdicated, they're running things, and no one has any knowledge of what money is. They do not know. They think they know. It is an idea. It is engineering. Douglas was an engineer. He understood it. And so he said, none of this would happen if we owned our own money and new money came out at no interest. Once it's out there, sure, if you want to buy a Maserati, go to a bank. Borrow it, pay their interest for your Maserati. But a government that can create its own money should never, never, never borrow from a small group of crooks. And their people pay it back in taxes? Absolute insanity. Insanity. So, what did we have at the end of this war? The bankers were even richer. So Russia controlled all of Eastern Europe. The bankers now control Europe. The EU, that was all planned ahead of time. Of course, then they had the Cold War going on from, when did it start? When did the Cold War start officially? 48, did it? Okay. Right on up until the wall came down. What was that, 89? 89, so they had all the arms and weapons people, made a fortune. The Cold War. Oh, it could start at any time. Oh, the spying, the espionage kept people busy worrying, and they set it up between them. The Cold War, all these people set it up. And that went on. And kids were going under desks, and all the money they made on the stupid shelters and duck and cover and all this. And everybody believed it. And the last time I was in the States in 2003, when they said cover all your windows with duct tape. Oh no, cover your doors, get your windows, your doors, get the duct tape, everybody. Well, when I got there, if I'd had one suitcase full of duct tape, I would have made a fortune. All the duct tape was gone. Everybody went out and covered everything with duct tape because they were told to, because something might be happening though with the nasty Arabs. So in 48, another thing happened. The UN was set up so that Israel could be legitimized, and Palestinian land was given away. And they had their passports, and they were there for thousands of years, but it was promised, so Israel was set up. If anyone saw Exodus, please, can we talk? Didn't happen like that at all. Millions of Palestinians were killed, thrown out of their homes. It was nothing but massacres. Nobody floated up in a big ship to an empty land, okay? No. As much as Cecil B. DeMille might have wanted it, didn't happen that way. And of course, the atom bomb was tested. That started off a new era of even bigger killings, and there was enough radioactivity in those two bombs and all the other bombs they tested in Nevada. People were already having their thyroids attacked, getting sick. That's when the cancers all started. We're talking all the bomb tests right after, before Hiroshima and after, tons of them. So the human race, ever since then, is being attacked by these poisons. So, oh yes, and of course, a huge debt to the bankers all over the world. Every country deeply in debt, and had to use their money everywhere. Even we did at that point. So everyone was in debt. And of course, we were using the bankers' phony money, and Germany, Italy, and Japan had to start using it too, okay? Using their money from thin air. And here we are today. They've gotten a bailout from us because we were threatened. With martial law, they could take over the United States because they've got Homeland Security. And it was said on television right after 9/11. 9/11, of course, was another false flag. This was the latest false flag, so they could go into Iraq. They said the plane was full of Saudis. Okay, but you're not bombing Saudi. You're bombing Iraq. How did this come about? Within 3 months, even with their phony story, they had the Americans were thinking already Iraq's the enemy. But they said there were Saudis on the planes. I mean, no wonder they have contempt for everybody. They can tell them anything. And they all believe it. After a time, they just keep repeating it till it makes a rut in the silly putty. And then people, oh yeah, go into Iraq. But I thought you said it was Saudis. No, there was no one on the bloody planes. They were done by satellite, remote control. Of course, we all know they didn't bring the buildings down. All the engineers are on the net. That was demolition, every goddamn one of them. So the results, oh, I should leave this on. So the results of those two wars where they have even more power. They've just gotten a bailout. Now Israel is going to go into Iran. That's right. Like I said, Ahmadinejad seems like he's working for the Mossad because he just keeps waving the red flag. And I'm sure he's got half a brain, so either he wants them in there or he's working for them. So now they have plans that they're going in there. And I heard it, as I said the other night. Now, here's the reasons they have for going into Iran. Now that we're up to Iran, their reasons. The pipeline has always had to go through Iran. They don't want to use Afghanistan. They don't want to, if you look at the Caspian Sea, Iran's almost in a straight line. They want the pipeline through Iran, number one. They've always wanted it there. And of course, Iran, they got rid of Mossadegh in the 50s, and he was going to, of course, he nationalized the oil and all of that. And that's what they're doing now. So they want the pipeline, and they want the oil as well. And of course, Iran's talking about using euros, the same as Saddam did. He said, oh, maybe I'll use euros. Well, that was another thing they didn't like. So now Iran is doing that and talking about that. It's pricing its market in euros. And of course, all the other countries over there, they support Palestine. They do that. And that's another reason they're going in, but basically for the oil. And they're determined they're going to go in there. Because it's not just some countries. The British, of course, had Iraq first. Then the Americans came in, and they had some agreements, disagreements about it, but it's all about the oil. But that in itself is insanity, because we keep using oil. This planet is just going to get filthier and filthier. But we have other energies that we can use. And one of the biggest reasons they hide all those and we don't go to them is because big oil will buy up. If too many people get interested in another form of energy, they're going to buy it up. Shut somebody up or buy them up. For instance, and this is true, your car right now, you could fill half the tank with alcohol at 25 cents a gallon. Any car today will run on gasoline and alcohol half and half in the tank. Yes. And as it's running through your engine, the alcohol will clean your engine like it's never been cleaned before. Now in California, they now have places where you can go and fill up with alcohol and put it in your tank with the gasoline. And what's happening in California now? These creeps are now trying to buy up every little alcohol company that starts up. Big oil will either buy up or destroy its competition. And you could do that right now if we had a place here where you could go from the gas station across the street to the alcohol station. And what are they making the alcohol from? They're making it from sewage, garbage. They're cleaning up the planet and turning it into alcohol. How come you haven't heard about that? You'll have to go on the net. Go on to a website called Alcohol Can Be a Gas. That's the name of it. Go on there and find out. But these people are now starting to try and buy up or threaten these people who are starting up these little alcohol stands. But this is where we're stuck. And why are we stuck here? Because we've got a small group of dedicated greedies running the whole place, and they will not stop at killing. We've done the class where all the presidential assassinations, all of them, from the beginning of the US, there have been at least 10 presidents assassinated because of the money people. These people here, the Federal so-called Reserve, they've assassinated more presidents than anyone else. There's a history. We might do it next term, or we might get to it at some point before the end of this term. But these are the people that are keeping us regressed into the wrong forms of energy, the filth, the dirt, the diseases. Now they're going to, and now, isn't McGuinty building more nuclear plants? This is like so regressive. They only last 30 years. They always have overruns. They cost millions more than they're planned. Only good for 30 years. And where do you put the waste? No one has figured that one out. But our government is so stupid that why are they still doing it? Because it's going to cost money. It's going to cost money to go into the new energies, investments of money. Oh, wait a minute. If you can produce 7 trillion for these people and several trillion for wars, where does that come from? Meantime, we cannot afford, we have to go into nuclear, the poison of nuclear, because we don't have enough to invest in some intelligent energy. You don't have to be a rocket scientist or have an IQ of 400 to figure that out. They are lying, lying, lying. They are lying, robbing, killing. Global. It's gone global. And it's all backed by this phony system. These people that have robbed our money system from us and privatized it. That just means robbery. Privatization means robbery. Where does it come from? In the old days when you had pirates, they were called privateers. You were a privateer, which meant you robbed everybody. So when something's privatized, it's being robbed. So this is what they're doing. They're killing us off, depopulating. And they've got their little homes set up inside the mountains. I hope when they go in there, something just seals them in there. That comes down like the Pharaoh's tomb, and they have to stay in there. Anyway, so the 2 wars set us up to this. The whole globe is in debt. So now everybody has to do, everybody talks about belling the cat, getting rid of the Federal Reserve, getting rid of the IMF, the International Mugging Fraternity, but nobody wants to actually do it. Get up there and do it. It's going to take some president or somebody. It'll probably be an American. I don't see a Canadian doing it because I just don't. When I look at people like Harper, Ignatieff, the big noble Canadian, he hasn't lived here for 40 years, has he? Suddenly he's here, he's all passionate about Canada. Anyway, this is where we are now. And now we are on the verge of an invasion, not even a war, an illegal invasion that will now see to it that the depopulation they want will come about. And they're already testing different bioweapons, but this DU, which they will not stop using, causing gross mutations and early death. This is depopulation because they know exactly what it does. It's not just about killing someone and that's it. No. It's the gift that goes on giving, like syphilis, okay? The DU. It keeps on killing. The food in Iraq is covered in it. The wind blows it around, the same in Kosovo. And if they go into Iran, we are going to get it. So the only thing I can say is get lots of kelp powder. Apparently kelp powder is very good for attacks on the thyroid, and a lot of people in Hiroshima who ate the seaweed all the time actually survived. And you'll have to go into mega vitamins. If they go in and they bomb, within a week, we will be in that cloud. We won't see it, but we will be in it. So I'm warning you now, if you haven't got a plane to Norway or Sweden, somewhere up near the pole, then stay in and supply yourself with all this stuff and pounds of vitamin C, or you will get a thyroid problem right away. And the whole world is getting that now. So what I'm going to, oh yeah, and they're going to bomb all the big underground places too. Bunker busters, DU loaded, it's going to be on everything, okay? And of course, they don't care about their own soldiers. They don't care. They're going to die anyway, and they don't give a damn. So, So war, here's my own little note here. War contains all the forms of mind control. Propaganda, drugs, trauma, physical torture, and then death, which is the ultimate mind control, of course. You're totally obliterated. So war contains them all. First you get all the propaganda to get everybody going. They can't have a war without it. You have to make people hate. People don't normally hate and want to kill their neighbors, okay? Usually they'll defend themselves, but they don't like killing each other. In fact, in the First World War, when it was Christmas Eve, one of those nights, the Germans and the people on the other side stopped and sang Christmas carols that night. The war stopped just like that until they had the Christmas carols. Men don't like killing each other. They want to have a life, raise their kids. Life is an adventure. It shouldn't be a torturous depth of hell and diseases. You're supposed to find out in your life what the hell you're doing here, where you came from, where you're going. But apparently on this planet, we don't do that. We just exist to serve these criminals here who don't have any souls anyway, so they won't miss them. This is what we're doing here. So somebody's going to have to get something going. So you've got the drugs, which they give the soldiers to make them more enjoy killing more. And then you have the trauma of watching your friends die around you and watching you kill children. Then you have torture. That's always part of it. And then ultimately, if you're unlucky, you pray for death. Nothing glorious about war, and there's nothing glorious about being dead in a war. What would be glorious would be to march on these bastards. Let them fight with each other till they're all dead, as far as I'm concerned. So, and they do fight with each other, but when it comes to the money, they all join ranks, trust me. They all join ranks. In fact, at Gallipoli, the Turks carried wounded Australians back to their company, and nobody shot at them. The Turks. And there's many Aussies buried over there now. And they say the Australians are part of our people, and they commemorate them. The Turks would pick up the wounded Aussies and carry them to their zone. You see, the soldiers are not the ones. They have integrity and they believe that the poor souls believe, that because of the propaganda. But the more people that know, the less they'll do this. So they have to give them drugs to make them eager to kill. They give them all kinds of drugs to make them more aggressive. And before we quit, I'm going to read you what Mark Twain said. He knew. Oh, in Iran now, they're seizing drugs that are coming through inside camels. So it says here they're cutting open the stomachs of the camels, 6 of them, poor buggers, used to carry narcotics from Afghanistan. Oh yeah, so that's one big, oh, we forgot that. Drugs. The drug money for all the black ops. The only cash flow they've got, because they have no cash, it's all paper. Drug money for black ops. That's what it's used for. The CIA, they've got the Afghanis working for them for peanuts, but that's another thing, a big bonus. They get up billions of dollars in drugs. And so they're seizing them now in Iran and the camels. And, and here's one last bit about Iran. A British official says, and remember the British put the mullahs in there. The British put the mullahs in Iran. Yes, they needed them to make religious conflicts, fundamentalism, they love it. Now, the European Union countries, a British official says, the EU has agreed in principle to freeze the assets of Iran's largest bank. There you have it. So they're getting ready. First, they're going to threaten them with this, that, and the other. And in the meantime, Ahmadinejad is mouthing off all the time, like, come on in, you know. So I don't know who he works for, okay? Let's say that. I'm very suspicious of him being so eager to have them come in. And you know the Mossad, I mean, the people they have working for them could be anybody and anybody, okay? From anywhere. This was written by Samuel Clemens or Mark Twain. It's called The War Prayer. And Michio Kaku would love to hear this. From the swamp of fundamentalism. And it goes like this. O Lord our Father, our young patriots, idols of our hearts, go forth to battle. Be thou near them. This is the Lord now, with them in spirit. We also go forth from the sweet peace of our beloved firesides to smite the foe. O Lord our God, help us to tear their soldiers to bloody shreds with our shells. Help us to cover their smiling fields with the pale forms of their patriot dead. Help us to drown the thunder of the guns with the shrieks of their wounded. Help us to lay waste their humble homes with a hurricane of fire. Think of Dresden. 480,000 killed in the firestorm, every one of them a civilian, and American prisoners of war as well. In Dresden, 480,000 civilians, nothing there but civilians. Same in Hamburg, okay? Help us to wring the hearts of their widows with unavailing grief. Help us to turn them out rootless with little children, to wander the wastes of their desolated land, broken in spirit. Think of the Palestinians. And if they have their way in America with the Homeland Security, we're all going to be Palestinians. Little children to wander the wastes of their desolated land, broken in spirit, imploring thee for the refuge of the grave, and denied it. For our sakes, who adore thee, Lord, blast their hopes, blight their lives, make heavy their steps, water their way with tears, stain the land with the blood of their wounded feet. We ask it of him who is the source of love and who is the ever-faithful refuge of all that seek his aid with humble hearts. Amen. Thank you.